Carol here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Glad you could join me today. Today I'm going to make a Christmas card with a Christmas tree and a saying from Washington Irving. And I make A6 cards. I like a large size, so I'm showing you that I'm cutting my paper. First, the 8.5 gets cut down to 9 inches, and then 6 1/4. And then I'll take it to my score machine and score it at 4.5. And then I'm cutting some white paper, the same 6 1/4 by 4.5 to go on top of my base card. Then in cutting some green cardstock, a little smaller yet, 4 1/4 by 5.5. And then I'm going to bring in some red and cut it 4.5 by 4 1/4. And we'll stack them all up here in a little while and you'll see what they look like. Then I have one more little piece that I need to cut that I'm going to do my stamping on, and it is white paper, and it is size 3 3/4 by 4 5/8. This just in case you want to know what these measurements are and should want to make something the exact same size. Of course, you can make it any size you want to. I save my scraps from my big old A6 cards, and I use them all the time. So here I am. I've taken it over to the Martha Stewart scoring board and scoring it at 4.5. Fold that over and mash it down with a bone folder, which is a wooden folder at this for me. And then here comes my stamping. I'm using a Stampin' Up! Stamp set. I'm not a dealer, but I have a lot of their, and never have been, but I have a lot of their products. And this one is called Sidekick Sayings, and I'm picking out the Christmas one with the sketchy looking Christmas tree on it, and the saying by Washington Irving. I'm using VersaFine Black Onyx ink. It's a pigment ink, but it gives a nice clear impression. And I'm stamping this off-centered because there is going to be something in the upper right-hand corner. So I want, and you'll see that in a little while, but I wanted to have this offset a little bit. And you might see that first impression wasn't all that great on the right side of the Christmas tree, so I'll go back with a Millennium fine line pen in a little while, ink pen, and draw that back in. And I'm stamping these early enough that they can dry, because pigment ink does take a little longer to dry, because I'm going to go back in a little while and put a little bit of watercolor on that. Now to the green sheet. I'm using this corner punch that is a heart, and I've had it a long time, but it's EK Success. I don't know if it's still out there or not, but you line up the corner, and I turn it over so I can see that it hasn't slipped, and so that it would be punched out irregularly and not be exactly in the corner. So that's why I'm trying to show how if it lines up really well in the corner, it's not a problem. And I tried to go ahead and mash it from this side so that I could keep an eye on it, but I couldn't make it work. So I ended up just clamping it down with my fingers to hold the card in place, and then really mashing hard and setting that aside. I don't think we use our cute corner punches enough. We just kind of forget about them. They've been around a long time, but they do put a nice finish to a card, I think. And so then here are the colors stacked up, the red, white, and green, and I'm putting them down to put some glue on them. I use Tombow repositional glue, the liquid glue, and so when I glue, I need to glue a little bit in advance so that I can set this aside and let it dry. Or I just go find something else to do and then come back. 15 minutes is probably enough. The glue goes on wet, and it goes on white, and when it dries, it'll be clear. it was stopping up on me a little bit, so I just wiped off that dried glue on the end. And there you can see the white color, but it will dry clear, and then it is totally repositionable. And if you're trying to stack things like this and keep them straight, this repositional glue is repositionable glue really comes in handy, because it just it can save you a lot of headache, and it's really extremely nice. So I'll set these aside to dry and go on to the next step. And the next step is going to be watercoloring, and I'm certainly not a watercolorist by any stretch of the imagination. This is a little Winsor & Newton paint set that I got, and it's little with 12 colors, as you can see. The name of it is Winsor & Newton Cotman Watercolors, Cotman, and this particular little set is called Sketchers Pocket Box. I'm assuming that's so that you can take it out with you wherever you go and sketch wherever you are. Make it portable. That's way beyond my lifestyle, because I don't do that, but I do love to watch people watercolor, and I do think it's absolutely beautiful. Now you might be wondering why you can see I brought in that little jar of water, and I have a rag there too that I can wipe my paintbrush off on. And this little paintbrush, by the way, came with the set, and I think it's a really nice little paintbrush, and I enjoy using it. It's very thin and fine. But I was going to say, you might be wondering why I'm painting on cardstock, but it does just find such a small amount and such a small amount of water. Otherwise it probably would peel up. There may be a little break in the sound here, but I was having trouble with the sound for some reason, so I'm doing this over again. But I'm just showing that I'm painting the two cards, and the second card I'm using a little lighter green than the first one, although I do go back and shade it a little bit with the dark green, which isn't necessary on something this small, but up close you really can see it, and I think it does look a little bit better, so it's fun, and I didn't mind doing it. Then I do paint the little red balls. I just literally drop the red paint in. I don't try to paint in a circle or anything like that. I'm just literally dropping little balls of red. And I did it a second time even to brighten that red up. And then I'm painting the trunks with the brown, and I was surprised at how easy that went, considering it was such a small area. But this brush is so tiny and so thin that it made it easy. So I was glad with that. But I painted the stars. I mean, not painted, but I colored them with Prismacolors, because I didn't want to take a chance with those stars. I'm bringing in another stamp set now called Punch Pals, and I'm just going to use one line out of several sentiments on this little stamp. It's pretty beat up here. At one point I had cut out another saying that was a gift for you that we used for our daughter's wedding, and so I put it back in, but I don't know why the whole stamp slid down the way it did, but I'm going to go back and fix it as soon as I get through with this video, but because that's just really bad looking. But I'm using two markers because the Christmas red, real red, was just about out. So I put down a base of another red, and then I'm putting the Christmas red on top. So hopefully I'll get a good impression. Now I'm gluing down the white sheet of paper right on top of the white base card. I didn't have to do that. I could have stamped directly onto the base card. I was just thickening up the card. But if you made a mistake on the base card, you could always go back and put another sheet on top. And so I'm trying to line that up, and it does just fine. It's way at the bottom of the page, as you can see, because the other pieces of colored cardstock are going to come back on top of it. And that's just about all the room that was left for that. Now, I was doing the second card the same way, and putting the ink on that little strip on the stamp, but it didn't line up as well. And so I decided that I needed to use my stamp positioner, my Stamp-A-Majig, and just to be sure. And again, when you make a mistake like that, you can always just tear that piece off because it's put on with repositional glue, and you can just put your another sheet in its place. So it's no big loss. You haven't lost the whole card by any means. So you'll see when I pull that up. It's not very good. So I'm going to redo that one. Get out the stamp positioner, which is kind of funny because it's going to throw it way down low since it's way down low on the stamp. But it did make it easier, for sure. If you have a MISTI, of course, you can use the MISTI. But just line this up. Put your piece of acetate there. Put your little handle on top and line it up. Put some ink on that stamp. And I'm doing this with markers because I wouldn't even know how to attempt to put that on an ink pad. And so that's a good way to be able to isolate something on your stamp. So we'll put it down. Push it pretty hard. I brought the handle back in just in case I needed to reposition that stamp, but it stamped just fine. And so now we're ready to go to the next step. This is a matter of bringing in the pieces of paper with glue on the back. So the first one we put down is red. Put it about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the page. Then the green comes next. It goes about 1/8 of an inch from the red. In fact, there's about 1/8 of an inch border all the way around with the red. And you can see that cute cutout showing. Now, I'm bringing in the watercolor Christmas trees, and you slide them in to that cutout. And the little corner is a little more difficult to get to show through, and actually you don't even have to, but I think it looks good to see as much what I call filigree or cutout as you can. And I'm fiddling with the repositioning because it looked a little crooked to me. And then the same thing with the white. And I consider that done. Now, just for fun, I did some others, and I fast forward through to show you how much fun it can be to slide those little white pieces of paper into that green cutout. There's so many ways you could use it. On a smaller piece, have somebody's name, use it for a name placeholder, you know, or a name tag, or anything small. Use your imagination. And there's one. Here's another one. You know, and whereas nowadays it seems like people use sequins to fill in, and we use all kinds of things to fill in. That's a pretty cute fill in right there, just to have that corner punch. And of course you could put it on the other corner. You'd have to really measure your paper carefully to be able to get it to fit into both corners. But anyway, that's the card for today. Merry Christmas. I have some still photos for you to see, and then one idea at the very end that just to get your thought processes going and maybe come up with an idea to use your rectangular dies. Thanks for being here today. We'll see you in a few days.